Brinsley, welcome to Strefa Dread for the first time.
Yes, it's been a little while, and this is the first time I'm gonna be on your show. So, dzięki.
And you are first time performing tomorrow in Warsaw. Are you ready to hit the capital of Poland?
I'm like a battery, you know, a never-ready battery, always ready, always ready. Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, you know, I played in Ostruda. And this is going to be the first time in Warsaw.
Referring to your one of the most beautiful songs you ever made, in my opinion at least, African Children, where you encourage people to know their roots. I was quite surprised to read, as I am always associating you with reggae music, that your family roots are not from Jamaica, are from Guyana. Can you tell me something about your family?
Well, they came from Guyana in the 50s. My father worked on the railways, and that's where the song Rainfall Sunshine comes from, if you know this song. And a family with 6 children, and they did the best that they could and give thanks, because they pulled up their roots from their home, as most of the Caribbean parents did in that time. And they fed and sent their kids to school. And then it became difficult because the children didn't feel like a second-class citizen. Our parents had that struggle that they were just new. But the children we grew up with our, you know, British kids. That's so. Therefore, we always felt that, you know, we were no different. Fortunately for myself, I found myself working in the film studios. So all of the film studios in England, Boreham Wood, Shepperton, all of those studios I worked in. And then I decided that I couldn't be a child actor forever. And so I had to make a decision what my road would be. And obviously it moved into music. Not that I was always into music, I always loved music, and I was playing in the band.
I know you've been traveling to Jamaica many times, but do you also travel to Guyana? Do you keep any family roots?
I've never been there yet. I've not been there yet, but everything has a time and a season, so there will be a time when I'll be there.
You mentioned your film career. I know you were a big star of film industry and TV before you really started your musical career. Some media even say you were first black children star on British TV, and you were coming with a double-decker. What was this about?
Well, this was basically an idea that was taken from the first thing I'd ever done. The Children's Film Foundation is a company that made films with children for children. And this is pre the TV, the children's TV. So you would have a Saturday morning, kids would go to the local cinema and have shows that were made for children. And one such show was The Magnificent Six and a Half, which was basically the same concept as the double-deckers. But the son of the owner of 20th Century Fox, he loved the idea, and he collaborated with Harry Booth and Roy Simpson to make a television version. And
what was this about? Here comes double-deckers. I don't know how to understand it.
Okay. What the double-decker signifies these were kids from London. And the double-decker bus is synonymous with London. Yeah. Okay. And they had in an old scrapyard, which was a place where people collected things, and we call them scrapyards at that time. And there was inside, there was a double-decker bus, which they had made their den out of. So, like, they would have a certain codes to get into their den, and you would see, like in the credits, you would see all this. Brains were supposed to have organized all of this, but it signified kids in London, and we did so many crazy things, like going into studios and getting ourselves into trouble. It was fun.
Tell me how you've heard reggae music for the first time. I've heard in one of the interviews you made that the first thing you remember you took seriously in music was the Beatles, not reggae.
No, reggae was part of my life. So we were hearing reggae at parties and dances and blues. My parents had parties and all of this music was playing. So this was music that we grew up listening to. The time with the Beatles, it was that there came on TV one day, I think it could be Brian Matthews or another gentleman, and he came and he said, now for something different. And the Beatles started, woo! And I just remember that moment. I remember seeing that. This was on a black and white TV, so it was back in the day. And obviously, I think I heard Bob say that you just know a musician, you just feel it. And I think at that time, I didn't know I was going to be a musician, but it was just something that made me go, it's music. Music can make you listen and make you, fill your head with ideas or whatever. You play music, you know. Surfer Dread.
Yeah. Are acting skills useful for the music performances? Do you sometimes act on stage apart from playing guitar and singing?
I don't think you act on stage because it's a different genre. But I think because I had done shows, I did some live shows with the woman who really gave me my first part in acting. My sister attended a drama school. Her name was Flavia Pickworth. And actually her son was Mike Hurst, one of the Springfields. That's Dusty Springfield, and the Springfields is a musical group. I think what it would probably do is help to make you at ease with an audience. Because if I had done shows, and because of the acting and just the ethic of what you have to do, you have to learn your lines, you have to get out there and stand in front of a camera. And when you're standing in front of the camera, you have an audience of people. So you have the electricians and the sparks and all these people. So maybe what it did for me was allowed me to feel comfortable in front of an audience. I think one person I have to say that influenced me a lot in performance on stage was Toots. I remember seeing Toots do some shows in the Railway in Harrow and in Cricklewood at Burton's, and I mean, he was phenomenal. So it's difficult to say, but I mean, I always had a different approach. I mean, I kind of felt like I worked with the audience. That was it. And if we're working together, I'm enjoying it. And if they're enjoying it, I'm enjoying it. So, I think I take probably a different approach to most. But it's...
Before even your band Aswad got big, Bob Marley and his crew landed very close to the place you were living in London, and you were helping them to get some musical equipment.
I worked in a greengrocer's while I wasn't acting. And one day, Peter Tosh came by. And a good friend of mine, when I said to him in the evening, I said, Delroy, I just saw Peter Tosh. And he said, yeah, man, they're just around the road. So we went around there, and that's where all of the Wailers were there. This was just in the time where Bob had signed the writing contract with Johnny Nash. And at that time, the king of reggae was called Johnny Nash, was Johnny Nash. So Johnny Nash had his tour Johnny Nash and the Sons of the Jungle. And Bob and the Wailers were supposed to be supporting. The story goes that they couldn't get their work permits. So they were stuck in this house in the Circle Neasden, waiting to get the work permits.
Which year was this, 73 or so?
We are talking about around about that time, 73, 74. I mean, this is pre-Bob having dreads. Bob never had dreads then. He had either his hair in plaits
kind of afro,
or an afro. And I had already been playing music. I was playing with Junior English. And I took my Marshall amp and Marshall box and guitars and took them to the house so we would jam. Family man always wanted me to play bass guitar. He said, no man, you have to play bass. And I would always end up playing bass and he would play guitar.
Did you also hang around with the Wailers around London, showing them around?
To be honest, Bob was always like a big brother. And you know, some big brothers are always kind of like, you know, you respect them and they're, but family and I traveled. We used to drive and go to all the different shows. And the first time I saw you, Roy, was with Family Man. And we'd go to Night Angel and Coxon's Place. Yeah, we had fun.
Talking about this top of the tops of reggae music, not too many people know that you play guitar on a famous Burning Spear Live London album with your friends from Aswad.
Yeah, the Burning Spear Live, I think it's called. One of the stipulations I put when I started the band was that we weren't going to be a backing band. That was no way are we going to be a backing band.
So you made an exception.
But obviously, when Burning Spear comes and says, you know, I want you to play with me, I mean, it wasn't actually Burning Spear. They came from, we were an island. It was, by that time, I think people we thought we had our sound. So, yeah, we said, yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it. And it was good because many people just thought we were a Jamaican band. And then when they found out that, no, it's not a Jamaican band, it's a band from England, they had already said, wow, this sounds great. So they couldn't switch it now and say, no, it doesn't sound good. So give thanks for that.
You broke many stereotypes. You were not from Jamaica, you were from Guyana. The name of the band, Aswad, comes from Arabic. How did it come?
Well, I found the name in a book of African names. And for me, it was, I wanted a name that people could say easily. And for however long it took them to suddenly one day go, well, what does it mean? And then find out that it was black. And, you know, I give thanks because that's happened to many people. Many people say, yeah, I know, but what does it mean? And it's black. And that's what we were doing. We were telling our story from the black point of view.
There's endless discussion of connoisseurs of reggae about the differences and specifics of UK reggae comparing to original Jamaican reggae. How do you feel about it? You have also your own experience as you performed with Aswad at Sunsplash in Jamaica.
What the difference is, Makenem, was that in the early days, the Jamaican musicians were jazz-trained musicians. It's only because
Alpha Boy School,
the Alpha Boy School. These are jazz-trained musicians, and they're playing the sevenths and the ninths, and kids in England were just listening and loving the music. So they were getting together and just going where someone would play major seventh and minor seventh. They were just playing the majors or the minor chords. So British music was said to be not authentic reggae music. But we have stood and we have listened to Jamaican musicians playing our tracks like Love Fire and looking at each other and shaking our head and saying they're not playing it right. And it's just, England has their own story now, their own reggae music. Lovers Rock was inspired in England. And this was the reason. I think people didn't look at really what the specifics were. England, for a long time, was copying the music, but not copying the music properly. Then when the bands like Aswad and Steel Pulse started to create their own music, telling their own story, the music became authentic to our story. And when Jamaican musicians tried to play it, they repeated the same thing by not listening to what we were doing properly. So we've seen it go full circle. We've seen that same mistake happen in Jamaica.
Yeah, and I've heard some covers, Steel Pulse, I think, covered by Raging Fire in Jamaica. Or
Close circuit. I mean, Morgan Heritage did a Steel Pulse number. So, you know, Warrior Charge and Love Fire have been covered by nearly every single artist in Jamaica. So, and I would say that probably 95%, I can probably go higher, do not play the chords, the proper chords. So we've gone full circle.
You were a part of Rock Against Racism movement in UK. You mentioned your neighborhood and white kids with black kids together, but from the other side, if you watch Babylon, there are very few white people in there.
What the situation in Babylon shows is the reverse of what we went through. Now, you would find that in the communities in the UK, there's probably one black kid in the group of white people. But Babylon shows it with a different thing. So you look at it now and you're going, oh my gosh. Around that time, there was the NF, the National Front.
Yeah.
And it was that confrontation that Babylon shows. Now, because it was dealing with a sound system, in school you were friends and everything was great. And then maybe on Saturday you'd go out and call to that friend, and that friend's parents would pull him away because of this stigma, this racism that was in just, I mean, if you think about it, I mentioned to you before that our parents felt like second-class citizens because they had come into a situation. Now, the same way with the parents of those kids that we went to school with, they'd never associated with black people. They didn't know black people. They just heard music coming out of something. They didn't know.
It needs time, you mean?
They didn't know. But the kids who we went to school with, who now have kids of their own, and we have kids, they're not looking at that. But what happens now is that you find ever so often when governments or whatever want to cause people not to look at the real situation, something happens. Do you know what I mean? And for me, racism is self-preservation. But what we've done, we've added so much to it that instead of looking at the situation, that we can't do it without each other. You know, we would still be in slavery days if there wasn't some white people that got up and say, no, I don't want to do this. Okay, I don't want this to happen, because we couldn't have changed it on our own. So, you know, it's like I say, we've gone full circle. Look at it in Poland, listening to reggae music. We're going to do a reggae, you know, concert, a reggae festival. So, you know, we just have to keep showing the love and sharing the love. Music has helped us to have one voice in terms of music. I'm sure there's times you will educate me on things that have happened in reggae. And I go, wow, boy, Makenem knows that. So, you know, we give thanks.
Speaking truly, Babylon is my favorite reggae movie because I feel it's really universal, and I find myself in this movie as a young punk oppressed by authorities and people who don't understand me. It's the same kind of vibe. And I was really shocked when I read this movie was considered somehow too rebellious, too angry for America, and it has been waiting for American premiere for 40 years.
Last year when we did it. America's only just come out of the whole slavery situation. You know, when I was born, I couldn't, Olivia and I couldn't be walking down the road together in places in America. So I can understand why for them it was considered, it was just too much for them. They didn't want to see that. They didn't want to see the situation where you have with Ronnie at the end. Because if they feel, that's why they don't allow reggae to really play too much on the radio, because if you start influencing people to fight back or stand up and say no to what's oppressing them, do you know what I mean? If you're the oppressor, you're not going to allow people to get up and voice their opinion, you know. But going back to the first part of what you've just asked me, the situation with the punks and reggae was similar, because this is what happened. I mean, we were all being oppressed at that time. The young kids who we had went to school with, this is the same thing. I can't find a job. I can't do this. And they started to identify with what we were singing about. And you've just said you identified, because then came the punks. And we all kind of suffered, and Rock Against Racism gave us a platform to speak out and say, you know, and this is where you got punks, reggae, all playing on the same stage. All of a sudden, people who before would have grown up, a sort of white person would have grown up with this separatism thing. Suddenly he's dancing next to somebody and going, wow, I love this music. This music is great. And, you know, this is what happened. This is what music is. I mean, I've been around the world to Japan and different places, and people will sing you the song that they love, but they can't speak English because they speak Japanese.
Yeah, it's just universal.
It's universal.
Yeah. Another very important aspect of Babylon is sound system culture. Apart from Aswad and performances with the live bands, did you also participate in strong English sound system circuit?
Yes,
I've seen some releases with Shaka you made.
I had, but before that, a group of friends and I had the Ute sound system. We had the Ute sound system.
Before Aswad, you mean?
Yeah, this was before, long before Aswad. And yeah, we had our problems with our sound, and all of a sudden we had like the lights on the front that went with the beat, and we had our capacitors like frizzling out, and you know, when the transformers going, you have all that gunk coming out of it. So yeah, I had my sound system days.
Did you carry heavy boxes in the early morning?
I've done all of that with Nick's sound, and yeah, I've done all of that. And funny, the group of us that travelled together, which we were supporting Nick's, was the sound system that played in Burton's. I don't know if you know of a club in London, in Cricklewood, called Burton's. It was a famous club back in the day. And Nick's was really the resident sound. And a few friends and myself, we would follow this sound, or we would go with him. We'd go in the back of the van and we'd lift the boxes. And we all got these cricket jumpers with green, gold and red. And at that time, I didn't know I was going to be Rasta, but it turned out.
You left Aswad in '96, and some media are writing you did it for spiritual reasons. Can you explain it?
The only way that I can explain it was we're a family. And just in any family, sometimes you have to go and trod your own road to make your own path. And I think that was the easier way to explain it. It was time for me to make my own path. And, you know, I'm glad to say that we're still friends. We're all still friends, and there will come a time when we'll probably get together and do something.
In last years, you did some special projects. You performed with an orchestra, you performed with Denis Bowell, present Babylon soundtrack. I was watching today a show from 2019 from Rototom Sunsplash. Can you tell about these special projects?
Well, as you said, projects. I was asked by a good friend to join the orchestra and play with the orchestra, and
how do you find it?
I was like, yeah, orchestras, yeah, cool. I remember saying to my mother, I just bought the Akai sampler, and I said I can play any. And my mother said, orchestras will never die. And I remember there was a moment where you hear the orchestra around you, and it's the most beautiful sound. I love it. And, you know, rest in peace, before my mother passed, she came and watched the show, you know. So that was a great...
She must have been happy.
Yeah, I mean, I give thanks, do you know what I mean? I think a moment that actually made her happy, I'll just move away from that a little bit. Obviously, a couple of years ago, I was awarded the member of the British, and I took my mother, and somehow they just loved her and said, and she just got a personal tour of the castle, and that was a moment for me that just I could see my mother was proud. And but anyway, back to the story of the different projects. So this was with the orchestra, why I mentioned my mother. The other situation was Dennis Bovell, David Hines. Dennis Bovell was from Matumbi, David Hines from Steel Pulse. We created a band called Three the Hard Way, and we performed at the Albert Hall with the UB40 charity. Well, it's a charity, but UB40 were doing the show. And we have this band that, I mean, I suppose it was the situation of the pandemic that they say is happening that stopped us from performing as much as we would have liked. But that's an ongoing situation, definitely. I've just done another collaboration with Kino from Big Mountain, and great track. I'll let you have that soon, but it's not finished. I can let you hear it later.
Talking about your solo releases, you made your first solo album in 2013, and then comes another released on Taboo One in 2016. Sly and Robbie featuring Brinsley Forde, One Fine Dub, with Cat Moore playing cello, Sticky Thompson playing percussion, recorded at Encore Studio in Jamaica. And it was like dub album, and then a vocal album was supposed to come later, and it didn't come.
The vocal hasn't come, but that's another story. But
it's a fantastic album. I really love it.
It's another story, but
it's a mystery.
Yeah, let's leave it as a mystery right now. We'll leave that as a mystery.
Okay.
But I hope you'll get that album one day.
So let's talk about Poland. First time, as far as I know, you arrived in Poland at the show I Was Myself in '89, Solidarity Anti-Apartheid in Gdańsk, when you were the MC of the whole show, with Twinkle Brothers, with Linton Kwesi Johnson, with many great artists also from Poland. At the end, Bob Andy. And at the end, you also sang One Love with all these people. What are your memories of that time? And was it really first time? It was completely different Poland then.
This was my first time in Poland. And what happened, it started, I have got a smile. I remember, and Dennis Bovell was there as well. And Dennis and I, we had to stop and take all the bags out of the plane in Geneva, or I can't remember where it was. And we were sitting in the plane and about to leave, and I said to him, look, someone's left their bag on the tarmac. When I got to, it was a little airport at that time. Where's my bag? It was my bag that was sitting there. So the first thing I remember about Poland, it was very cold at that time. It was very cold.
Minus 20 or so.
And we got into a bus. They put us in a bus. They gave us a brown bag with a sandwich, a kanapka in it, right? and a blanket. And I put the blanket against the window. I mean, I'm freezing. I only have a jumper and jeans. I don't have no other clothes. And I put this against the window, and I remember lying down against it, and it froze. You said it was -20.
Yeah, and I know there was no heating on this bus.
So this was my very first thing of Poland, that it was going to be really cold. But we got there, we enjoyed it, and they said to me while I was there, well, look, will you present the show? Because I came with a friend who was working with the BBC at the time. Mm-hmm. And so that's how I was there. So I wasn't scheduled to play. But when I got there, people said, look, will you present the show for us? So that's how that went. And then it was like, well, you have to sing. You can't be here and not sing. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's always been a really, really great memory. Mm-hmm. And then I was in Jamaica, in that fantastic club in Jamaica. And I met Olivia, and she said, you know what? I have a recording of that tape. So I have that in a special place. Mm-hmm. One time we were asked to do the Miss World concert, okay, to be the music for the Miss World. And I didn't really remember, but I was speaking to my manager at that time, and he said, do you remember when we did this concert? He said, do you know who won the concert at that time? And he told me it was Miss Poland. So many different things. We did Sopot. We did Sopot, but
you did Sopot Festival?
We did Sopot Festival, yeah.
As Aswad?
Yeah. Back for Don't Turn Around.
Really?
Wow,
I didn't know it.
Yeah, we did that. But my favorite so far is Ostrud. I can't,
Thank you. Polish band, Polish project, Polish living. It's not so typical, but a British-born black guy moves permanently to Poland and decides to live in Krakow. Tell us something about it.
What the heart wants, the heart has to have. So, I think one of the first things that made me comfortable, it's not as cold as it was back then.
Yeah, it's global warming.
So whatever it is, it's not as cold. And I've enjoyed myself here. I've been able to concentrate more on working and I record a lot at home and I work at home. And so I've had that option to work. Normally if I was in the UK, there'd be knocks on my door every 5 minutes, or somebody would be calling, I have to do this or I have to do that.
You have more peace here.
So now being able to just relax and concentrate on music has been a great feeling for me. I've had to struggle with making decisions. And I know it may sound strange, but for over 25 years, all the decisions were made with 2 other people. First of all, it would be 5 people, then it was 2 people. Yeah. And I think you always kind of second guess yourself, and then maybe it's not that. And that's, I think, what I've now become more comfortable with, making the decisions myself and saying, right, okay, this is what you feel, go for this, do this. And I think it probably, hopefully, has made me more comfortable in the way that I work and the time to get things the way that I want it. Because I think when you're working in a unit, you've always got to somehow go, okay, maybe I won't do that one again because we need to do this or we need to do that. So Krakow has brought that for me.
How many years it's been already? How many years?
Is it 2 or 3? It's got to be, if we said 2019, you said, was the first time. So it's been a few years. And I think now I have my legal stay in Poland. So, and I have my PESEL number. And we have some things that we're working on.
Do you have your favorite pierogi place?
My favorite pierogi place, I have to say, the best pierogi
Is Mami.
is Olivia. Yeah. No, she has.
I believe love can be also a strong motivation to work.
Well, I think to be honest,
music.
We've gone through the lockdowns and what have you, and I think for two people at the start of a relationship to still be strong within that relationship, in the midst of all that going on, where you're thrown together, I think it says something. So we're expanding. We've got a lot of projects outside music that we're about to go into, and we're looking at what's going to happen, you know.
How this idea about working with Polish musicians came to you, and what's your feeling about these people you are working with, and what's your feelings about the Ostruda first show with these people?
Well, with Ostruda, I had 2 years of meeting yourself, Peter, your wives, everyone, and you made me feel like family. Obviously, because of Olivia, but I felt like a family. We felt like a family, and I was really disappointed that the album had not been released, because this is what we had said, that this, we would have done. I would have done performed the album. And Olivia and I were talking, and I said, I really wanted to play. So she said, well, why don't you just perform as Aswad? Call Peter and see what he says. So I said, we called and spoke, and that was it. And it was Olivia again who had suggested musicians. I mean, I had been kind of working on a project where I was singing in Polish, and that project I'm still going to do that project. And it was, okay, well, maybe you've been working with them. And because I couldn't bring musicians from the UK because of the, and I think when you want to perform your music, it's a little bit like you think, oh my God, I should really get musicians from England. But we got in, and everyone was willing to work, and everyone's worked really hard. And now we have a collaboration from Svitliki to Sasha Mani to, you know,
Paprika Corps,
it's a collaboration. And I mean, I'm really thankful to Ostruda for allowing me to do, because the thing was, look, I want to do this Aswad Experience, but I want it to be the proper thing. And for a promoter to say to you, well, okay, you can do a 2.5-hour show, it's difficult, you know what I mean? I can imagine. And that's why I give thanks that I was able to do that. And I think the band performed magnificently. I mean, I know the word that I use for the band is "zaebiste." You know what I mean? They were great, and you know, hope that we're gonna play, and then people will enjoy it as they did in Ostruda when we play at the festival, Rook Festival
tomorrow, Róbrege.
Róbrege.
You mentioned this new album. Could you reveal some more details about this album? Does it have any title already? I know you were doing some recordings in Jamaica. You've made Chilling.
This album I think is going to be an album that I'm really satisfied with. I know people always say this, but it's like what I was saying to you, to have a time when you can make the decisions for yourself. And I struggled with even the first album. It's like because when you have other people with you, you know, they can either encourage you or they can say, no, that one's not sounding good, don't do that. But this album, totally more or less made in Jamaica. And for me, I think it's going to be a strong album. I think it's going to be a strong album. We have just a few guests. We have Marcia Griffiths, Judy Mowatt, and Marcia said to me, not everyone gets to get this harmony. So, you know, that's an honor to have them on. And also we have on the album David Carroll, who I guested on his track Burning Bridges. And he's guested on a track on this album.
And also, as far as I know, Warrior Charge, your famous song from Babylon, is expected there in a vocal version.
Yes, we dropped that one. We dropped that one. Yes, yes.
Okay, my last question. First song on the first Aswad album, I Am a Rebel Soul. Are you still? Do you rebel against the same things?
Because as I said, things really haven't changed, because we are still fighting the oppression of those who would subject us to whatever it may be. Yeah, still a rebel. Still a rebel.
Thank you, Brisbane, for the interview.
Dziękuję.
Dziękuję również. Dziękuję.